Good morning. My name is Heather Morrison with Bold Beyond Belief, and I am overjoyed to have Miss Brenda Bryan with us this morning. I love this, a kick-ass inspirational speaker, the diviner of human potential. That is so gorgeous. As a speaker's coach, transformational coach, and mastermind facilitator, she supports women to unmask and nurture their genius, empowering them to live in the strengths of their passion. I love that. Brenda and I met at a speakers group, which is very appropriate for what she's going to talk about today. And we've known each other 5 years, I want to say.
At least I think, especially since we've been in lockdown for 3. So yeah.
Right.
So.
Since the world's been on hold. So tell us a little bit about the name of your company and how that came to be, because the majority of female entrepreneurs typically create their business because it's a fire that they've walked through, right? So tell us a little bit about your fire that you've walked through and like how your company came to be.
Well, you're always on the hunt for how can you expand in the universe. And I'm a creative thinker, and I've always been tapped into women's empowerment and the notion that the patriarchy silences women, because part of the second wave of the feminist movement. And so my roots come out of that kind of look at oppressive structures and look at how that impacts on individuals. And I have a strength for speaking because I'm dyslexic. I have to work around. I'm a workaround type of gal, which puts me in a lot of different situations that I get to work around. And so it was through that creative doorway that I got to really build a relationship to my own power because of the women's movement. And then there was a point in this journey where I was looking at how we were pointing the finger at others, expecting them to change for our lives to be different. And it was, in the mid 80s kind of thing. And I'm like looking at this and kind of going, something really wrong about the basic fundamental principles of this. If we're expecting other people to do it for us, we are victims to our own reality. And I wasn't really happy about that. And nor did I know how to do anything about it until this book fell on my head called Working from the Inside Out. And it changed everything for me, because then I began to understand the importance of the emotional intelligence work, and recognizing how we were in our own, what the story we were in. I recognize the story of the patriarchy and the capitalists and church and all that. That's not a problem. But if we're going to change our own lives, we have to take responsibility for what our divine gifts have been, that we've been given as women, that we co-create, that we're collaborative, that we cooperate with each other, that we're great communicators, that we are the essence, we are the creative force that births this world, and yet we are not given any of that fucking power. Whoops, sorry.
This audience has heard that word before, but let your freak flag fly. Absolutely. Yep.
Let's go there. Right. And so it just really became part of my mission in life to find a way forward that was more beneficial for women to step up and claim their talents and their gifts and their light and their genius. And I had no idea how to go about it until I met a friend of mine in Vancouver who I lived in a co-op house with her, and she handed me this book, this catalog from Heartwood Institute, and that changed my life. It was a window where I saw this woman sitting in a field holding a baby fawn, and my whole body went, I want that. I want to live in that level of connectedness to nature and peace and youth and softness that comes with babies. That I was a hard ass. I mean, not that I'm not one now, because I think I am, but that hard edge of trying to fight the world put a lot of armor on me, and I wasn't happy with that. And so my journey became, how do I drop the armor, and then how do I help other women step into their power from a different type of spiritual source that has momentum to it, that is about healing the planet. That is my ultimate objective. It's small, it's easy, no problems making it happen at all.
Yeah, it's interesting though that you say that it's small, but it's so impactful, right? That
Online.
that idea that, I was at the networking event last night. I was talking to a woman and she said, well, I asked her what her path was, what was she doing right now? What was her passion project? She said, well, it's really not a big deal. And women do that to themselves all the time. You never hear a man say, well, it's not really a big deal, but right. No, they get it out there with bravado. And so I love that, even though you said there was a small idea, it's like you talked about last night, the butterfly effect of, it's that ripple in the pond effect, that if women can get the idea that what we have to say matters,
Yeah.
right? And it impacts so many people. And one of the things I love about your program is that it's kind of like where the woo meets the work, right? Because it's not, because you're so good at bringing in that, tapping into your power. And I know that you do the drum circle, and I want to talk about that a little bit later, but you bring that in, but then you also give, the mindset and the mechanics behind it. You actually give a basic fundamental, set of fundamentals for people to follow on how they can be brave enough to stand up, tell their story. First of all, tap into their story, because I don't think a lot of women know they have a story, right? And then actually get up on stage and talk about that. So how do you, what's something that's something that you've been needing to be bold for in the past, that you stood up, you found the courage? First of all, what was it? And how did you find the courage to be bold for that? And then turn around and use that for other people, like use that in your teaching for other people.
I think, first of all, I'd like to say that my comment on it being small is sarcastic. I believe that it's really good work to change the world and to heal everybody, and to bring a philosophy and a principles of spirituality and our connectedness is bold work in a world that wants to keep us separate and apart. So just saying. I think that I don't, I often wonder about this myself, to be honest with you, but I started channeling spirit when I was 5. And so I don't think I had any choice in the matter as to what I needed to do, to be honest with you. Anytime I try to deny it, something would happen that would force me into having to do it differently. And so every time I would go into hiding, spirit would come along and knock me on the head or speak to me in some way that said, it's time to get yourself moving now, which is how I got to Portland. That was a bold move, because I was sitting quietly in my morass, minding my own complacency when I had 2 major surgeries, at which point I realized that spirit was talking through me, through the opportunity I had to actually have a full whole body, a healthy body, because I had a tumor on my kidney, and if that hadn't been found, my life expectancy would be very different, and also my health would be very different. And so when that happened back in 2010, it was a call to action for me. And I stood in my kitchen kind of going, okay, Creator, you got something, you got a plan for me. I get this now, because you just saved my life. All right. And so I didn't know what that was going to look like until I had to be truthful. I was just like, okay, I've got a call, don't know what to do with it. And then I had a very visceral dream over a 7-day period. Actually, I was in a dream state at camp, where I was there for Himblechi for a Vision Quest camp. For 7 days, I was watching all the places I was empowered and all the places I was giving away my power. And at the end of that 7 days, at 4 o'clock in the morning ish, after the ceremonial fires were going out and we were packing up to go home, we were in bed, but we were going to be going home the next day. A voice came to me and said, surrender, sell everything, go solo. And I popped up in my bed, and the only thing I could think about was Leslie, my partner of 10 years, is going to really be mad about this. That was the only thing. Everything else was like, okay, no problem. I follow your directions every time anyway, but Leslie's going to be really unhappy. And of course she was, but that's what brought me, that was a bold move to sell it. I did sell everything. I did leave my 10-year relationship, and I did move to a town where my spiritual community was, but I really didn't have a huge plan for how I was going to earn a living, or what was I going to do. So I did turn to coaching because I am a qualified coach, and I'd been playing hermit for 12 years, buying and renovating houses, and just, having drum circles in my backyard and all the good stuff. And then it was time to take a step forward. And so immediately I actually said, okay, I need to re-engage in the business world, because I was hiding. And so I went to the School of Integrative Nutrition, and I took a course from them, and that rebooted my whole sense of place in the coaching world and what I wanted. And and for 3 years I worked as a health coach, but it's not my genius, and it was not my path, but my transformational work was. And so I started to really reconfigure like what I had and what I could do. And I had a huge failure. I had built a program called the Raise Your Voice, which didn't have Speakers Club after. It was just Raise Your Voice. So, raise your intentions in life, come to a different place of your own beliefs about it. And I was up and running, and then boom, within a month, everything I was doing fell apart. And so I stood in the house that I live in. I stood in the dining room, and I went, okay, Creator, something else is needed here, and you apparently you have an idea for this. What is it? And speak to me clearly about it. And so the clarity came when I went to a power meeting, and I heard a bunch of women say, I just don't really like doing introductions. I don't like public speaking, and they're all business women, right? They're all wanting for their lives to be different and wanting to show up in some way. And it's like, well, all I could say was like, damn, I can help with that, because the minute I stepped into Portland, I stepped into Toastmasters, because I knew that I needed to lift my own voice and my own frequency, and I needed to show up, and I needed to go back to some old skills that I had as a leader and somebody who'd been leading a lot of groups. So I did that. And so it's like, okay, well, I got that skill set. So that's how Raise Your Voice Speakers Club came to be. It's like, all things said and done, I'll go where I'm needed, and that's the truth of me anyway. If I'm volunteering for somebody says, "Well, you go do this," I said, "Of course I'll go do that. If that's where you need me, that's where I'll be." And so, so that was a journey of really stepping into, using all of the faculty. So I built the Speakers Club on three pillars. One is that I've been I'm a transformational coach. I believe in the inner work, and I believe that a good speaker does the inner work. The other one is that I've been, self-employed for over 35 years. So I've been running my own business for a long time. And then since high school, I've been a public speaker. So it's a long journey, used at different ways at various times, but always used for, hopefully, my best places is using it for the good of all. So it's been about leadership. It's been about rallying people. It's been about calling people into alignment with a truer version of themselves, whatever that looks like. And of course, I'm a truth teller, right? So I make a lot of people uncomfortable, because I stand on the truth of what I'm seeing, hopefully from a place of heart. But it's scary for people to be called into the integrity of the truth of them.
I love that. And I was going to ask you to go back and kind of talk, because I think that unless you live in that space, you and I have both done a lot of personal development stuff.
Yeah.
But not every female entrepreneur has. A lot of women, they get tired of their 9-to-5, or their kids go back to college. They decide they're going to open a business. Boom, you just do it, right? So talk a little bit about what that inner work looks like, because I'm not sure a lot of people are familiar with what inner work means and why it's so necessary to then be able to turn around and tell your story to people.
Well, I think what it really boils down to is paying attention to your longing and your discontent,
Mm.
and
Oh,
that
yep.
that we've been called in for a purpose. And when we deny that purpose, we get very agitated by everything. We become ill, we become less respondent, we become complacent. When we start listening to that longing and we start being in the inquiry of like, what is it I would really love? That's the big question I think we need to be asking ourselves. What would I really love? And so we come from that place of noticing what we're noticing, right? Being aware. The emotional intelligence work is really about paying attention to what you're thinking, and then what emotions get are being triggered by that thinking, and then how do we interrupt the pattern of that thinking, because that's all paradigms, all beliefs, patterns, habits that were poured into us as children, that women aren't deserving, that women should, um, stay quiet and just listen. I mean, we have so many things that the society has poured into us as our right as children, and then our right as women, that have formed a lot of our sense of lack of confidence and our sense of lack of ability. And none of it's true, by the way, because our purpose is greater than any of that story. And so that is our story, like how we hold back, or how we have faced many, many challenges, whether it's, a woman who's wanting to be a mother but can't, or a child dies on them, or a woman who has this craving to be an artist but is told that artists can't make a living. I mean, there's just so many stories. And so our job, I think, is to say, no, that none of that's true for me. And that's a hard place to live. So we do need to rally. This is why I like groups. I like groups because when we put group mind together, what we have is a support system to say, yes, you can do it. So, Heather, I reached out to you to be a partner in belief, very, very clearly wanting somebody with the kind of light and energy that you bring, because I can't do it alone. And so, I called on a couple of people who are doing work that I admire, or showing up in ways that I care about and that I want to support them. So we all need partners in belief. The
Mm.
inner work in this case is to recognize that the paradigm wants to keep us safe. We might call it ego. We're going to use the word paradigm because that is a system of patterns, behaviors that create our circumstances. And if we can start becoming aware of that story we're telling is creating the circumstances themselves are malleable. We can step forward in any direction we want to when we choose to take responsibility for what our heart wants, and what our passion is calling for, and what our creativity and our imagination can dream up. And so I'm really into the creative process of your imagination can take you anywhere, because it has taken me everywhere I want it to be, with more to come still.
I love that. And I love it, going back to like the moment in your dining room, I call that a God flick. I'm not necessarily a religious person, but I always get this visual of when you're calling out and saying, what do I need to do now? What's the lesson? And I just imagine this big hand coming down out of a cloud and going flick on the back of your head, going dummy, right? It's right in front of you. And then you heard all these women at this conference say, I don't know how to introduce myself. I don't know how to do that, right? So if we're open to that, it's right in front of us. So how do you, because you've talked about it a couple of times, how do you listen to that inner voice? How do you know that inner voice is the one you should be following versus the inner voice that is the chatty Kathy in our head, that is the nonstop fear? You shouldn't be doing that. You're going to embarrass yourself. You're not qualified. How do you differentiate between that chatty Kathy and the voice? You said there was a name for it. You called into it when you were 5. Spirit?
Yep.
Spirit. Yeah. So how do you differentiate between the chatty Kathy and spirit?
Well, the chatty Cathy is a negative force, and you feel it that way.
Okay.
Well, your intuition is something that's going to kind of lead you to a place of feeling good about yourself. It's an empowered voice, and you've got to develop it. It doesn't just happen because we've been so told that intuition is something that's nebulous, but it's not. Most leaders, most men who are leading make a decision on 30% of information because they're following their intuition. They're following their sense of place because they have enough knowledge. I think something called a tipping point, or I can't remember the other book that that guy wrote, but it talks a lot about following guidance from a different viewpoint. But but that's the separation. If you're being told that you're not good enough, that is not your intuition. If you're told that you can't do it, that is not your intuition. Your intuition is a calm, peaceful, gentle rising up of something in you that says, go take a left. And you go down that road and you see the thing you've been looking for 4 months, right? So, it's sitting there. It's a store you didn't know even existed. And then you go in and it has everything you've been looking for months, right? So we follow, or you take that left when you're not your normal pathway, and you avoid a big traffic jam, or you avoid an accident that you could have been, So it's about developing it, being willing to listen, and your intuition will speak to you as loud as you're willing to hear. So the more you stay tapped into it, the more it's going to come. And I don't question when I'm told to do something. That's the other side of it, because I know when it's my negative story, because it has a very different feeling quality to it. It's not in alignment with what makes me happy, right? But that small still voice that I'm calling out to listen to, when it speaks to me, it's about peace and calm. It's about there's a quality to it that helps me just simply relax into myself. And when I'm relaxed into myself, everything that I'm looking for is happening for me and not to me. And so I'm asking for the things that need to happen, and they're not necessarily easy sailing. The challenges are there for me to build and grow the muscles that I'm going to need for the next level of up leveling my vision, right? So nothing is happening without it being purposeful, if I see it that way. And I choose to see it that way because I know it to be true. Everything that I've gone through, I mean, I'm a Renaissance woman, right? I do I do all kinds of shit, right?
Yep.
So the reason I do that is because I go after the experience. I go after, like, I haven't tried that. Like, what would that be like? How would I grow from doing that, right? So, I mean, I've done, I had a mobile food cart called a crepe wagon when I was in Nova Scotia. Like, there was 3 of us who were doing mobile food on the street then, So there's things that I've done that have all added to kind of how I show up as a coach, how I show up as an advisor, how I show up as a mentor, because my life experience, like, I can talk about all these things from hands-on experience, and that is a very different thing than book read. I lived.
Oh, yep, for sure. Yeah, I think it's important because I talked to a lot of women. They're like, well, I don't have the professional qualifications. And I was talking to a coach once, and she said, who was a very, very successful, very wealthy coach. And she said, I have a PhD, which stands for Public High School Diploma. She said, this is a fire that I've walked through. That's why I know it so well. So that's kind of your journey that brought you to where you are now. So what are you working on now? What are you doing besides teaching women how to stand up at a networking event and tell them, tell the world what they do? How else are you transforming women's lives in your speaker club?
Well, I think the big thing is just giving them the space to truly be seen and heard, and appreciate it for the genius that they show up in, and loved and nurtured, because that's the biggest thing I think that the club provides, is a sacred and safe place for people to experiment with what is my voice and how do I bring it out and how do I stand for it. So that's a big thing. I'm really going down the track of wanting to do storytelling, and I have a company called It Must Be Said Productions, because back in the day I did one thing with the club that was a fireside stories, but I want to do another one. This one I want to call Collective Stories, One Voice, because I really want to rally 10 to 20 women to tell their story, not one-on-one like the most format is, but to take 3 to 6 months to write their stories together, and then for the theme to come together, and for 5 or 6 of them to tell one story that is in harmony with the theme. That is all of it, and then rotate through the themes, starting with the hardships, the lessons, and then of course coming to where the strength and the power lies, because they lived that life, because they had that experience and they're still here. There's a lesson there, there's a strength there, and there's something to pass on to people who are sitting in isolation and alone, thinking, I'm the only one who had that experience, I'm the only one, and I mean, they may know that that's not the truth, but in your heart, when you're sitting in that story, and you're sitting in that not knowing where's a safe place to tell that story, that eats away and creates a lot of disharmony in the body and a lot of dis-ease. And so we gain weight, we become alcoholics, we become drug addicted, we become sex addicted. That's we find ways to channel that pain. And what I'm asking for is that we tell the story to first of all, to acknowledge that this was a painful situation, but also to use it as a healing leverage for the power that you are now. Because if we're not leveraging our life experiences, we're not doing a service to the spirit that's breathing through us. And I think it's our job to do that, to take and leverage our lives to the best of our ability. And if that's walking dogs, great. If that's what you get to do, great, because that's what I'm thinking about doing next, is becoming a dog sitter, because I'm missing an animal in the house, right?
Yeah.
But where can I give love that's of service to what needs to be taken care of, and how can I love myself through that process? Because my own paradigms are rigorous and mean spirited sometimes, and and so I'm doing my work. And opening to kind of, how can I be a more creative, imaginative, taking action person in the direction of what I love. And so I'm really spending time in that journey, really harnessing my own passion and making sure that and my passion is to see other people's light shine, period, right? So I can see that in any capacity, whether it's somebody bagging my groceries and I can give them a kind word for the day, or thank them, or appreciate somebody for what the work they're doing. If I can be a person of increase in any way throughout my day, then I'm doing what I believe Spirit has called me to do.
You're so amazing that way, Brenda. You're just such a gift to the world. And speaking of gifts, I wanted to find out if there was anything that you wanted to share with our audience today.
Well, love talking to people, so that's a good thing. I'm going to do a quick connect pitch March 31st, which would be a 4-hour workshop on, how to do your introduction. But we'll do some fun, magical things, out of the box ways that we bring about your vocabulary and also light up your spark, because, for me, most introductions are boring as hell, and I hate being bored. There's one thing I reject is boredom, and so so it'll be a fun time to kind of find another way to light up your genius, and find some language and support from other people in the workshop to really find some different ways to express the thing that you're doing that stands you out from the crowd, because we all we all need to stand out in some way. We all need to be collectively present for each other, but we also need to have our own light shining so our gifts are being utilized. And that's what this Quick Connect pitch is about, is really finding a way. We'll have structure and we'll have things that are pretty common, but the language you put into that structure will come from a different viewpoint of how to experiment and step into ownership of a different version of yourself.
I love that. And you're so good at that. And I love that you call it Quick Connect as opposed to elevator pitch, right? Because a lot of people think that, an elevator speech or an introduction or a get up is just for me to, blah all over the audience to get out there what I do, right? But it's more than that. It's how do you connect with this person? Because even though you might not be, doing business with this person, you might be able to refer this person to do business or even not do business. Just connect with them as a human being. Right. And I think we discount that a lot. So I want to be mindful of your time. I know that we started late today, but I wanted to make sure we got a full half hour in with Brenda because she's so magical and I just adore being in your space. So I want other people to be in your space as well. And can you let us know, and of course I'll put it in the show notes as well, but can you let us know how people can find you and work with you?
Well, my website is www.brendarbryan.com. There's a 30-minute strategy session that you can sign on for there if you want to kind of sit and kind of get more details, more insight as to what I am doing. And of course, my email is brendarbryan@gmail.com, and my phone number is 503-728-8700. All of those ways are great ways to touch base with me.
Perfect. Miss Brenda, is there anything you wanted to leave the audience with at this point? One last little gem of magic that you have to share?
Well, I think that that there is a spirit breathing you, and it's important for you to recognize that you are here for a purpose, and that it's your job to work the purpose. It's your job to get past the paradigms, get past the stories, get past the limitations, and shine your light so that you can be a contributing member to what needs to come next for our planet to actually be a place where we actually want to live. I'm just saying.
I asked for it. I got it. That was a gem of magic. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brenda. I just love being in your space, and I'm so excited to share you with my audience. And again, I'll put all of the show notes, all contact information for Brenda in the show notes. And with that, we will thank Miss Brenda for a bold breakthrough today, and we will talk again next Thursday for another bold breakthrough for next Wednesday.
All right. Thank you, darling. So appreciate it. Good to see you. Bye everybody.